universal wisdom. In this video, we would like to address the universal path according to the universal wisdom. In the spiritual school of the Golden Rosicrucian, we see this universal path as three spirals that have been represented in the past by three roses: the white rose, the red rose, and the golden rose. In modern terms, we can understand these three spirals as the birth of a new consciousness, the unification of this new consciousness with the spirit, the universal ideation force, and third, as the transmutation of the entire being. The birth of this new consciousness is based upon the spirit spark, the universal principle, the center of the universe, the center of the microcosm that we carry in the innermost of our hearts. Based upon this principle, after countless experiences, when the human being has reached the very limit of his or her consciousness, then the consciousness, the human consciousness, can be touched by this principle, by this spark, and be awakened by it, as if it ignited inside of us a fire. This fire is what transforms each one of us into a seeker of the truth, a seeker of our own true selves. So based upon this inner awakening, the human being begins the universal path, the path of the universal wisdom. And the first aspect of this path that needs to be manifested into the human being is a different kind of knowledge, is a true self-knowledge that awakens, that blossoms like the petal of a rose from the heart into the head. Organically speaking, this impulse of the spirit spark awakens different centers in our brain, awakening in us like a pre-existing memory, a memory of ourselves, as if we were looking at ourselves from outside the prism of our self-centered, egocentric consciousness. So seeing ourselves as we truly are, inside of the prison of our thoughts, our emotions, and our reactions. This new capacity of the consciousness is the very first principle of this new consciousness that starts to blossom, that starts to awaken in us. And based upon this new understanding, this new vision, this new self-knowledge of ourselves, we can then dive into the depths of our hearts and unveil the prison of our emotions and see the astral tensions in which we are always involved, entangled, imprisoned. And with this vision, we can take a decision not to connect our consciousness to those currents anymore. Gradually, experience by experience, this self-knowledge and this new space of perception inside of our consciousness can truly transform the functioning, the very functioning of our consciousness, allowing it to choose to which side, to which voice it will listen inside of its own heart. The old voice of the egocentric consciousness, or this new growing voice, still subtle, but growing new voice of this new consciousness. The voice of the rose, the voice of the spirit spark, the voice of the silence. So, in daily life, we start to build this new connection, this new bond, a golden bond with this new center in us, with the spirit spark. At this point, it is as if in the human being we have a new arc of light, an arc that unites the head and the heart, that up to this very point would function in a divided, totally erratic way. So with the head and the heart united to this point, around this very center of our being, we can then start to dive into the depth of our unconscious, the depths of our automatic reactions, the depths of the reactions that determine our repetitive egocentric behavior. This behavior cannot be trained, transformed, or even enhanced on a permanent way. We can certainly try using different methods, occult methods, mystic methods, even magical methods. But all those methods, what they do is to merely enhance the existing structure of the egocentric consciousness. We become better egos, more powerful eventually, but we remain in essence the same. What needs to take place is a totally different transformation, a transformation that should occur as the consequence of this new power, of this new force, of this growing new consciousness that is manifesting in us. This new consciousness can then, like the beam of a torch, illuminate the depths of our unconscious and bring in front of this new consciousness everything that is taking place, really taking place inside of us. The space of perception grows from the heart, the head, and now into the life sanctuary, into our biological reality, our instinctive reality. That also becomes visible gradually, experience by experience. And with this growing space of perception, we can then start to gradually change these automatic reactions, not forcing a change, but through a totally different understanding, a totally different self-knowledge that has grown into a conscious connection with this spiritual force, with the spirit spark. And based upon that, allowing us to react differently. Because since we see this inner world more clearly, it cannot control us the same way it did up to that point. This transformation of this inner attitude is what allows us to transform our actions, our interactions with all the world and all the people around us. Not by trying to escape the reality we live in, but by transmuting the reality into something totally different. Not in a forced way, as we said before, trying to change the exterior, the circumstances that surround us, but by changing from within. This transformation, dear friends, of the three centers of the human consciousness, the heart, the head, and life, or our hands, right, is what creates this different space. The first arc of this new light and the second arc of this new light, like the symbol of eternity that takes place in our own being. This symbol of eternity represents the birth of a new consciousness. That is the white rose. That is the first spiral in the universal path. And the human being that has reached this point is then ready for the second spiral that works pretty much in the same way, in the same inner space. But if we thought about music for a moment, it would sound like the same melody, but on a higher octave. In other words, it is the same process, but at a much higher vibration. What is this higher vibration? As we said before, we are inhabitants of a miniature of the universe, like a micro-universe or a microcosm. The center of this microcosm is the spirit spark, the true center of everything. And around this center, there is a second and very powerful force, the power of the sphere. Using the words of Hermes Trismegistus, this boundless sphere that manifests itself anywhere. That second power is the second pole of the universal force or power of the spirit in us. It is as if it were the power of the entire universe that surrounds us, but cannot unite itself to us because of the barrier of the egocentric consciousness. So, after this first spiral of transformation, when a new consciousness can actually take place in us, it is as if we opened a luminous space, a space filled with light, a totally different light. This new power that manifests in ourselves as a new fire in our hearts, as a new light in our heads, and as a new space of work, as a new space of manifestation in our inner world. This entire new construction, this new consciousness, it can grow. It can grow and become stronger. Like if it were demolishing all the barriers of our old egocentric consciousness, opening up a much bigger space of self-perception, of this inner silent light. When this new space grows enough, when it becomes big enough in us, then there are no more barriers between our consciousness and the universal power of the spirit that surrounds us. between our consciousness and the sphere of the boundless microcosm in which we live. Then this second power of the Spirit can dive into the central core of our consciousness. If we think about our nervous system and our spine, the new consciousness circulates around it through the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. In this second spiral, this immensely big power of the Spirit can merge with our consciousness in the very central aspect of our serpent fire system. And when it enters our head, our hearts, and our lives, it creates in us the fiery staff of Hermes, the shape of the new spiritual consciousness, the spirit soul, the red rose, the crowning of this second phase, this second spiral. And to the human being that has climbed not only the first spiral of the new consciousness, but the second spiral of this spiritual consciousness, the consciousness that has been united with the force of the Spirit, to the force of the Spirit. Then the third spiral, that is represented by the golden rose, can manifest itself. This third spiral, this sublime third spiral, is the spiral of the true inner alchemy, the alchemy of the Rosicrucians, the alchemy that transforms all the aspects of our entire being into a new being that is united with the Spirit through the new soul, united with the universal manifestation through the power of a new consciousness. And the same process takes place, the same inner movement of renewing the head, the heart, and our lives through the recreation, through what we in the school call the transfiguration of our subtle vehicles, our energetic vehicles, our mental body, our astral body, and our etheric body. Dear friends, this path is the path that is open in front of all the seekers of the truth. It is the path of the entire transmutation of human life, of the entire integration of our lives into the very meaning, the higher meaning of our existence. This path is also the objective of all the spiritual schools of the past and also of the modern Rosicrucian, of the golden Rosicrucian. We hope that all those that have been awakened by this spirit spark and as such became the seekers of truth, the seekers of their real selves, we truly hope that they can find this path, follow this path, and be able to transform themselves. Because when a human being transforms himself from within, he can become a change agent in the entire world and for all humanity. The vision of this new future is what inspires each one of us. Thank you for joining us today, and would like to invite you for all our future moments of reflection.